What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on nootropics and biohacking. So I want to talk about when to bring in research chemicals. I want to break down 3 different examples of 3 different research chemicals and when to bring them in, particularly after you've exhausted all other options to try to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve with those research chemicals. In the meantime, this broadcast is brought to you by the Cortex Stack. Right now, I estimate from 3 p.m. Eastern time that there's about 24 hours left of $24 per bottle. That's just looking at how fast bottles are moving at this price and how many bottles that we have left. So if you're looking to get a bottle of Cortex for very cheap, you have to do it now. You probably got about 24 hours left. What we're trying to do is move as much of it as we can, get it out of here. New batch is coming in, and then probably about a month later, we're gonna run historically the biggest special we've ever run on the Cortex Stack. So we need to move these bottles. Our loss is your gain, $24, livecortex.com. This broadcast is also brought to you by the 3.5 month intensive nootropics consulting program. What is it? Well, as Terry Lideker says, Ryan had me firing on all cylinders in weeks. Terry, hope you're watching, Terry. I thought, okay, it can't get any better than this, but it did. We continued optimizing elements of my sleep, hormone function, and everything else in between. We kept nailing down additional nootropic stacks that just helped me power through my day and get 50% more done. I was apprehensive initially on the spend, but if you're a business person, have the budget, and want to work with the best mental optimization specialists in the world, pull the trigger with Ryan. The enhanced brain function alone is worth it. Probably got 4 or 5 slots on the 3.5 month. It's an ongoing, very results-driven, intensive, frequent communication brain optimization program that you work with me, mostly business people. If you got the budget, do that ASAP at livecortex.com. Okay, so I want to talk about when to bring in research chemicals. That is the main topic. We're going to discuss three research chemicals. So let me see if I can get those research chemicals on the screen. Let me just get some more text here. Text 2. Bear with me with this new but epic program that I'm using to actually do this stuff on the fly, which is really cool. I never thought I could do that, but I figured it out. And we are going to be talking about PRL. This is PRL 853. We're going to be talking about PT-141, and we're going to talk about 9-methyl Carboline, 9-MEBC. Okay, so we're going to put those on the screen. I'm going to get them down here. We'll put those right over there. Okay, so here's the deal. Look, research chemicals are really awesome. They can do a lot of interesting targeted things that nootropics may not be able to do, or they can be used to determine which mechanisms you need to actually work through a repair protocol to fix something, right? Sort of like prodding and probing. You probe into things, determine the mechanism that's awry because you've got something research chemical wise that's stroking that mechanism and it's alleviating your problem. That means then you've got to look further into how to actually fix that issue underlying in the chemistry, not just band-aiding it with a research chemical or whatever. Look, there's reasons for bringing in research chemicals related really just to experimentation. I mean, when PRL 853 hit the scene, I needed to experiment with it, right? I have to learn about it, understand its mechanisms, take it in various doses, stack it with various different stacks, and find out how it works. So there's a lot of different situations, but as it relates to the main point that I want to get across, which is you really only bring research chemicals in for the most part when you've exhausted all other options on nootropics for what you're trying to do. So I want to illustrate that in 3 different examples. Okay, so let's take PRL 853 for example. Very interesting compound, pretty much improves, from what I can tell in my own experience and others, memory I/O to an extent, so putting things in and out of your memory, holding things in your memory, but generally more on the side of just allowing you to have a better functional working memory. People that sit in front of computer screens and do analytical or otherwise data work, whether you're a programmer, whether you're running servers for a 50-person law firm, you're the IT person, or otherwise, lots of work, that cerebral work, you require your brain to be functional enough to hold a lot of pieces of information in your brain. Like, you don't want to get off track. It's And there's certain compounds that you can take that allow you to focus better in that capacity. That's pretty much what PRL 853 is useful for. However, what you should be doing first, instead of bringing in PRL 853 because you heard like it was awesome from me or somebody else, is you should bring PRL 853 in. This is the main point. When racetams and Noopept do not do the job. And specifically, you're looking for more computing power, right? More of a reservoir to hold information in your working memory and generally more computing power. So a good example of that on a client that I'm working with is, yeah, look, we get great results with some racetam stacks. We get particularly interesting results with a aniracetam uridine low-dose alpha-GPC stack. And the guy's like, look, man, I'm functioning better than I have in 20 years, and I really, really feel good. However, there's something missing. I'm realizing now with this accelerated brain performance, there's another level I can take it to. And that extra level is just having noticeably more computing power, okay? We're achieving computing power, but there's noticeably more that this person at least is trying to achieve. That opens up, it really separates us from racetams and Noopept. We really wouldn't want to make dose modifications on those compounds at that point. You know, we've refined good stacks with this particular person. We'd want to bring in PRL 853. This was not my first suggestion to this person based on what they wanted to do. It just wasn't. I think goals are, now being created because the person realizes how good they can function. But the main point is, when racetams and Noopept are not doing it for you, as far as computing power, and you need more, that would be a good time to bring in PRL 853. Just one example of when to bring research chemicals in and how they're used practically on a sort of scale, a time scale of using nootropics for reaching certain outcomes. Number 2, PT-141. PT-141. So you can find that list of stuff there. There it is. Yeah, so it's right over my face. PT-141 is pretty interesting compounds. Basically has a very singular mechanism. It's MC3R and MC4R. Those are melanocortin receptors. And that compound, which is a research chemical, basically just binds to those receptors and provokes an erectile response. It's more powerful, I would say, in some sense, than like sildenafil or other compounds for erections. It's just hypothalamus mediated, straight shot to erections. When would you bring that in? Okay, so like if you've got erection issues, if you're a dude, that would not be the first place to start. Particularly because, and I think this is the major overarching point, if you do that, if you read about this research chem, PT-141, you've got erection issues, you bring it in, it works, well then all you really have is a Band-Aid, right? You have a Band-Aid and you don't really have the solution to your issue. So ongoingly, you're either gonna have to keep taking it, which is probably unsustainable, there's not a whole lot of research behind it, or at the very least, you haven't actually solved the issue. Now, could it be related to melanocortin receptors sites? Yes, in some sense. More probably related to generally the hypothalamus, because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the hypothalamus as it relates to the testicular axis and all this other stuff. So first though, when you've got erection function issues, you've got to run through the gamut first. You've got to run through tests. What is your total test? What is your free test? Is your total test converting to free test adequately? You've got to look at serotonin dopamine imbalances. Generally, aside from PSSD, if you have imbalances in the way that serotonin works, so generally the 5-HT system is not regulated, you'll have sexual function issues. You need to work on repairing that first before trying something like PT-141, a research chemical. Now listen, if you've exhausted all these other options and you absolutely need relief from your erection function issues, that would be the time to bring in PT-141. But make sure you do everything first. Look into tests, look into sex hormone binding globulin, look into blood pressure. I've actually run into folks that thought they had low test, thought they had sex drive issues, thought they had primarily erection quality issues, and it turned out that they weren't making enough aldosterone, they weren't regulating blood sodium and water correctly, and thus they were running around with epically low blood pressure, like a walking pass out. Once that was resolved, erection quality came back, okay? But in the event that you absolutely need to induce erections, PT-141 is a very powerful compound for that. And again, its action is binding to melanocortin receptors in the hypothalamus, and that just triggers the erection response. Lastly, 9-methylbcarboline. We talked about this a lot. It's one of the most impressive compounds I've come across for a lot of things. Not just for me. I mean, I get a subtle response from it. It's pretty good. I stack it with some things every now and then. But I've seen people recover syndromes that have taken them 7 years, and all this different research and experimentation with things like L-Dopa and everything else in the book that just haven't really made a mark on it. That 9-MeBC was actually, over a long period of time, in conjunction with a few other things, able to recover this person's state, this negative deranged state of chemistry. Say, when do you use 9-methylbcarboline? Again, the theme here, when you've exhausted all of the other options that you have available or that you could use to essentially optimize dopamine receptor sites. I mean, that's one of the major things that it's working on, and then fixing tyrosine hydroxylase and dopa decarboxylase. So uridine monophosphate has some pretty impressive actions on dopamine receptor density. CDP choline, impressive actions on dopamine receptor density. Cordyceps mushroom has some pretty impressive actions on particularly upregulating the D2 receptor. And there's a lot of other compounds out there that you could try first on the nootropic side to try to fix your issue, whether it's related to the mental, visceral libido response or its general motivation. You've got to work through all of that. If none of that works and you're convinced it's dopamine, that's when you bring in 9-MeBC, right? If you've taken bromotain, you've tried to upregulate the conversion enzymes and nothing gives. If you've done a restoration protocol with raw precursor and nothing gives, then it's time to bring in the 9-MeBC to try to sensitize the receptors, at which point you probably, if you've exhausted all other options, get a positive response. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. With all these and with all the major research chems that are out there, the major thing to understand is, though there is research on some of them, there's not a whole lot of research on a lot of them. And so you would want to, in a conservative position, exhaust other options first. And then the major other point is, if you shift right to research chemicals to try to target a symptom that you're having, well, that will tell you something about the mechanisms of the symptom or the derangement that you're having, in which case you need to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to actually resolve that chemistry. But in the end, in a lot of cases, if you're using research chemicals, it's really just a band-aid for something that you ultimately have to fix. And in cases like PRL 853, look, stick with Nupep, racetams, Alcar, other cholinergics first. And if you're not able to reach sufficient computing power, then bring in the PRL 853. Hope that's been useful. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. This broadcast has been brought to you by the Cortex Stack. I estimate there's probably about 24 hours left until we blow out the rest of our inventory. $24 a bottle right now, livecortex.com. Go get it. This broadcast was also sponsored by the 3.5-month intensive. For the record, folks, I've only got, I want to say, it's like 4 or 5 slots left on that. This is the most comprehensive, results-driven biohacking consult, aside from the 6 months that we have. And as Terry Lideker's review here on the website demonstrates, look, we just get people a lot of substantially good brain function. Get that at livecortex.com. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.